What's up, everyone? Good morning and welcome to Shaw Local's Bears Insider podcast. And Sean, yeah, it is a cold morning across the Chicagoland here, man. Hope that you were able to stay warm yesterday at Soldier Field. That was one of those games where anytime they showed a crowd shot, I was sitting there going, much rather be on my couch watching this today or up in that press box than on the field.
Yeah, I was fine. I had no complaints, but I knew several people in the stands, several friends and stuff were in the stands on Sunday, and it looked mighty cold, and it was cold. Even just the walk from the parking garage to the stadium was not fun.
I mean, I wouldn't have been able to go no matter what, but I had a friend text on Saturday evening saying like they had an extra ticket to the game if I wanted it. I was like, you could pay me and I would not go sit out there in the cold and watch that football game. But
Well, and the announced attendance was under 50,000, and so anyone complaining about the Bears potentially moving indoors, they didn't exactly show up for the cold weather game yesterday.
good morning, everyone. Is Carlos Santos injured? I didn't notice that. We'll get to Carlos Santos in a little bit, Mike. But yeah, good morning to you, Rick. Mike B, a good friend already in the chat. Good seeing everyone this morning. Yeah, and that just goes to show you because there is enthusiasm about this team still, despite being 3-10. The announced crowd though under 50,000. We've reached that point of the year, even where the enthusiasm is still high for a 3-10 team. That it's just not really worth it at this point.
It's
But
just so cold, and yeah, you know what? At least there wasn't any snow or anything like what was going on in Buffalo on Saturday night.
and at the end of the day, the game that people, if you were sitting in those stands, you got treated to a pretty good football game yesterday, and that's really what we're here for, obviously, to talk about this morning on Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. Of course, you can find all of our content at shawlocal.com. Plenty of coverage from yesterday's game. We'll have follow-up today from Hallis Hall. Sean will be out there. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. And yeah, you go into that game yesterday, and none of us expected. There were very few people, I'm sure, very few Bears fans that even expected the Bears to win that game. But they go into that first series. You have two false starts. You have the false start on Ryan Griffin. You have a false start on Braxton Jones at left tackle. You have the injury to Equanimous St. Brown after they overcome those two false starts on a nice passing play over the middle. He gets a concussion on making that reception. Took a really hard shot to the head. Then obviously the very, very scary situation with Teven Jenkins, all this occurring on the opening drive. And I thought to myself, oh God, like this is the game we've been waiting for where things really go off the rails. But lo and behold, Sean, like I said, they lose the game, but overall, there's still plenty of positives to take away.
There were a lot of scary moments in this one, and yeah, that first, honestly, it was the first like four snaps from scrimmage where all that, the penalties and the injuries, EQ and Teven Jenkins, that the Jenkins one in particular was obviously a really scary situation, and Matt Eberflus confirmed that he did go to the hospital yesterday, but didn't really tell us a whole lot more than that. I imagine we'll probably find out some more Monday afternoon when Eberflus talks again, and hopefully Teven's doing okay. We just know it was a neck injury; it was pretty serious, and he went down and he didn't. His legs were kicking, but he didn't even attempt to get up, and that was a scary situation. They brought out put him on I forget what they call it, a backboard or whatever, not a stretcher, but They had to lift him up, and it wasn't good. But yeah, I mean, there's another scary moment later in the game where Justin Fields leaves the game, and nobody exactly knew what was going on there. Turns out he was just cramping up again, like we saw in that I believe in that Atlanta game where he was cramping up, and
Yeah.
He told us afterwards he's just going to take an IV every game before the game, and that's his plan moving forward. So whatever you need to do, right?
I'd say, are we moving into Carlos Zambrano territory? If you remember that, like he used to have the issue cramping up during starts, and I believe it was like talking about eating more bananas before his starts and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, you're used to, or you expect it like early in the season and in warm weather, like a December game where it's barely cracking 20 degrees at Soldier Field. You don't expect to see cramping issues. but at the end of the day, that's not really a big issue. The big issue is Teven Jenkins. And I do think it's a good time, or it's good to spend a bit more time on that, Sean. Rick, as you kind of already mentioned, Rick had asked any word on Teven. I'm sure we're going to find out more at Hallis Hall today. The Bears aren't going to. I don't think the Bears say anything until Matt Eberflus addresses the media, and so if anything came out, it would probably be from national writers at this point, I'm guessing, and I haven't seen anything. So Rick, between now and then, I don't think you're probably going to see anything. We're probably going to be waiting until what time does Matt talk today?
I believe he's at 1 o'clock or maybe noon. They just sent out an updated schedule. I got to double check.
Okay.
Yeah, he is at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and so, man, that Teven Jenkins injury. I mean, it's scary to begin with, just for any player, but particularly you feel worse because he's a well-liked kid in the locker room. You saw it after the game with the way his teammates talked about him. It's a kid that really battled through. I hate when people talk about battle in adversity, but this is a case where you had a kid that was a potential first round, a high draft, picking him going in the second round, really struggled his rookie year because way down on himself going into the year. Obviously, we don't know the exact details of what happened, but things were weird in training camp, to say the least. And he comes back, ends up finding a role in that guard position, really excelling, and then to end up on the turf yesterday in that state. And it was a weird injury too, Sean. Like, it's a neck injury, but I'm sure you've seen the replay. Like, there isn't clear trauma, right? Like, he didn't take a blow to the head. So there's a bit of concern there when you know that he's got a history with the back injury. Like, he's already having they've had the what I believe a hip injury.
Yeah, I think he had a hip injury earlier this year.
Yeah, and now you got this. There's a certain level of concern that even goes beyond the normal level when you would have an injury such as this.
Yeah, it's totally concerning, and you're right. I mean, Teven had a heck of a season, or has had a heck of a season after all that weirdness in training camp and find the struggle to find a spot for him to play on that offensive line for a few weeks there, and then he finally got rolling at that right guard spot, and he's been one of their best linemen, arguably their best all season. He's been really solid at that right guard spot, and for him and the team, that has worked out perfectly. That's exactly what both of them needed. Teven just needed somewhere to play, somewhere to get a starting spot, and the Bears, they were looking for a right guard for a while. They were trying a bunch of different guys out at that spot.
And somewhere to build his confidence. I mean, you're around him a lot more than I am, but like, he is clearly a young guy that has excelled at every level, and like they talk about him, or like they wanted him to be a mauler, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't playing with the confidence that allowed him to develop that, and his confidence was clearly way down going into this year. And I think him finding that spot and being able to excel there and settle in, it brought that back out in him.
Yes, and you know what? Being around these guys just a little bit in the locker room, you can see how that confidence affected him in the everyday. He was Teven is like a really, he's kind of a quiet dude, but he's also like a really well-spoken and thoughtful guy. And you can see like just the way that he interacts with his teammates and the media and stuff when things sort of got rolling there for him. Like he's been in a really good place, and that's awesome to see considering where we were a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say there is, like, you've been around locker rooms enough. Some guys are really good at hiding their emotion and the way they feel, and some guys wear it on their sleeves, like any human being does. And Teven certainly seems to be a guy that it's a little easier to get his body language, to know where his confidence is. And you, like, as you were getting there, you could see it in his face, the way he talked, the way he interacted with his teammates, with the media. You could see it building into something special. So yeah, there's a little added concern because of that.
So Matt Eberflus, he did say after the game that the initial news he got from the medical staff was positive. Take that to mean whatever you want. But hopefully hopefully Tevin's okay, and he's going to be back soon. Who knows what exactly that means as far as playing football. There's only 3 games left. It obviously looked like a pretty serious thing. It wouldn't be surprising if we don't see him the rest of the season, Kyle.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. Rick in the saying in the chat here. Some were saying that it could have been a stinger, and then he had followed up with Corey Wood and said that. I hadn't seen that from Corey. I went back and watched the game again this morning, Sean, though, and that was actually my thought again, or my first thought today. I wasn't on social media a ton yesterday, so I didn't see the speculation. But having gone back and watched it myself, that was my reaction when I saw it because it was kind of up in that left shoulder area, got wrenched back, and he continued to block before falling down. Like I said, it was odd.
Mm-hmm.
That does kind of make me think that did it look like, and it sounds like a stinger the way it developed, the play developed, or the injury developed.
And it could be one of those things where, anytime you're talking about a neck or head injury that looks serious, they're gonna be as cautious as possible with those things, because you don't want to do anything wrong in those situations. But yeah, we'll find out more from Matt Eberflus this afternoon.
So Micah might be checking in here, and it says, as good as the coaches showed going into and out of the New England pseudo bye, talking about having 13 days off. I can't remember, 11 days off. It was a Thursday night game, then all the way to the Monday night game. So yeah, a lot of time. This was as bad of a showing for the coaches as we've seen. What do you think, Sean?
I mean, I think you can get on them for having penalties on the first drive and looking a little sloppy early on in there, but I don't know that I would always necessarily blame that on the bye or not. Sure, you had 2 weeks to sort of prepare for that drive, but I also think that things looked so good coming out of that mini bye because of all the changes they made on that offense. And I didn't expect them to make wholesale changes with their offense this time around. They finally figured out something that was working after that mini bye. And I don't necessarily think that they needed to change something that has been working the last few weeks.
I thought it was a pretty impressive performance from the coaches yesterday. Now, there were certainly moments, and there continues to be moments that cause me concern, but you're going to see that in any NFL game. Like, none of these guys are perfect. Now, I'd say that they're occurring at a higher level than maybe you want from your top coaching staff. But like, what I guess I would say is like the decision not to kick the field goal in the first half rubbed some people the wrong way, and I certainly understand that. I like being aggressive, but like, you're talking about an offense yesterday that was without Darnell Mooney, without Chase Claypool, without N'Keal Harry. You're running complete. I'm looking not to sound mean here, but like guys that are bottom of NFL rosters are out there as you're starting 1 and 2 receivers. On the first series, you're already really thin on the offensive line. You barely have been getting by with your offensive line. And then you lose by far the guy that's been performing the best on that first drive. Justin Fields took 5 sacks in the first half. And anytime they tried to drop back on anything of significance, he was under pressure. So what I don't know how much you can take away from the coaching staff being a little more conservative yesterday when you put all that together, Sean.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Cairo Santos said, his distance in that weather that day. They go out before the pregame. They he might have his distance in a perfect scenario. He knows that. But every game day, he goes out there and kicks before the game and says, okay, I'm hitting from this yardage and not this yardage. And at a place like Soldier Field, that changes each day with the weather. And yesterday he said his range was 45. That kick was obviously a little bit longer than that. But certainly, it's less than 50 yards. It should be a kick that an NFL kicker can make. But if Cairo Santos comes out and says, I can't make this right now, what's Matt Eberflus supposed to do? You can certainly send him out there and have him kick the field goal and give it a try. And Cairo did say that if the game were on the line, he would have given it a try. But in that situation, end of the first half there, you're trying to pin a really good Eagles offense. I'm okay with that move in that spot. if your kicker is telling you that.
Yeah, and more than that, I think Cairo Santos kind of gave it away a little bit when he said like if the game was on the line. Because and so I'm going to pull up here. We'll go with follow up with Mike when he was in. So the coaching problems, he listed them here for us. Penalties: Treston Ebner on 2nd and 11, Cole Kmet one-on-one blocking Hassan Reddick, using Alex Leatherwood for spite, punting from the 31. I'm going to try and break all this up. Penalties: all right, you want to put that on the coaching staff, particularly that first drive, 2 false starts, that's fine. Treston Ebner on 2nd down. Like, that's the thing. Like, David Montgomery isn't playing 100% of snaps. Now, are you upset that they used him on 2nd and 11? Yeah, I get it. But, like, they want another running back for that potential, like, right, or that position. Like, that should have been Khalil Herbert. He's out. But, like, they're like, all right, we're going to put the rookie that we drafted in on this position. Like, Cole Kmet blocking 1-on-1. Yeah, shouldn't have happened. But also, you talk about the coaching staff made adjustments. Justin Fields took 5 sacks in the first half. The offense didn't look all that great. He took 1 in the second half. They moved the ball a lot better. I would say that's adjustment. Using Alex Leatherwood for spite. Like, what else are they supposed to do with the injuries on the offensive line here? Like, they want to get a look at a guy that they traded for, a young talent. Like, they're not trying to win football games, Mike. Like, they're trying to do things to set them up and find out what they have.
Yeah, and they're doing it in subtle ways too, like that. Those aren't necessarily like the big. You're not throwing Treston Ebner out there for the whole game. And with regards to like the Cole Kmet one-on-one with Hassan Reddick, like the other team is they're scheming to try to get those matchups, and every once in a while throughout the game you're going to be at a disadvantage in a spot like that. They're going to put a guy here or there where you weren't expecting, or ideally Cole Kmet would have some help in that situation.
Yeah, and this is what we don't know. So that was clear.
Right, we'll never know all that stuff.
Yeah, like we don't know. We want to say, did they put him in a one-on-one situation? Okay, but did the Eagles, as you said, line him up? And did Justin Fields not properly recognize it? Like, we don't know what exactly happened in that situation there, because it was, obviously he needed to have help in that position, but who was the person that needed to get the help in place there? Was it a bad play call that they should have seen coming with the way it was lined up against them? Yeah. Did the Eagles surprise them? Did Justin miss it? There was several things there. We don't know exactly what happened on that play. The fact that, like I said, that they made the adjustments at halftime and the offense looked better in the second half, I think is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, they found a way to make this a 1-score game and to give themselves a shot at the end. And it was really nice to see Justin Fields after dealing with the cramps and going back into the locker room. And he comes back out on the field and the crowd gets excited. And he stepped in there and it's almost like he didn't miss a beat. And they were able to drive down the field. I know Byron Pringle, they caught a break that the Eagles completely lost Byron Pringle on that touchdown throw. But still, you found a way to score a touchdown and get yourselves in the game. And that's against a really good team. And hey, the defense, came up with the stops that they needed. I think I don't know about you, Kyle, but I was impressed with what this defense was able to do against an Eagles offense that has been, rolling through everybody.
I was particularly impressed with the secondary, because
the secondary in particular. Yes.
Yeah. The pass rush still
not there.
Still not there. They did get home maybe twice. I can't remember offhand. They got
definitely
home
at least once.
Definitely at least once, I remember. But
Joe Thomas had the only sack of the day for the Bears.
There were times, particularly in the first half, where they weren't getting great pressure, but Jalen Hurts was having to hold the ball, and the Bears were able to make plays based on the fact that their secondary was playing so well down the field. And it's encouraging because that comes after a week where the Bears secondary played better than expected against the Packers with all those guys out. Now, obviously, you had 3 starters back this week, or 2 starters back in Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. But Jalen Johnson played really well yesterday. And it's so funny. You look at the you look at the totals for AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, and you're going to say, well, like AJ Brown just put up his best career game. And by the way, I got a AJ Brown rant coming up in the Tennessee Titans that I've been thinking about all morning. But the secondary played really well, considering they were playing the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL.
Well, yeah, and that's why you got to watch the game and take the stats, with a grain of salt, or just understand what you're watching, because yes, AJ Brown had a career day yardage wise, but I thought Jalen Johnson actually played a pretty good game against him, and really that big 68-yard completion is what really set those numbers over the top for Brown. And sure, Jalen got beat on that play, but he was right there. He was maybe half a step behind him. And I thought there were several times throughout the game where Jalen got the best of him. And really, Jalen said it after the game, like you just got to make every single catch hard on him. And that's in that
And he
cornerback
did.
position. That's
He
all
did
you
for the
can
most
do.
part.
He
I mean,
did for the most part.
there was, I believe it was the second touchdown when they went up 17-6. It was a Hurts' second rushing touchdown. It was a sneak, but AJ Brown was tackled at the 1 yard line on a play down the right side. I believe it was the second touchdown. And it was a ball that was a perfectly thrown ball on the outside right shoulder to the pylon. Jalen Johnson had himself in perfect position, and it was a perfect ball from Jalen Hurts, and it was a great catch from one of the top receivers in the NFL. And at that point, you tip your cap.
You talk about the play where he was like down at like the 2 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't stop that. That was perfect on both ends for them.
Yeah, and now this is where I'm going to go into my AJ Brown rant, because anyone who's been listening to this for a while knows that I love AJ Brown. But I'm going to use this as an example about the dangers of and how quickly front office decisions can go awry, because you're looking at, everyone wants to talk about all the monies the Bears have to spend this offseason, like all the cap room. But really, it doesn't take long for things to go off the rails. Like, you look at Tennessee, right? This is the franchise that everyone felt good about the last couple of years. Like, they're like, oh, they're getting the most out of Ryan Tannehill, like Derrick Henry with these explosive plays. Well, the issue was they had their mistakes, and like they had to make some tough decisions. Like Ryan Tannehill, they trade for him, they pay him, they give a large extension to Derrick Henry. Like, they end up with these contracts to where AJ Brown, still on a rookie deal, they made the decision of they were going to trade him. And all of a sudden, you took one of the best offensive players, one of the best wide receivers out of the game, that vertical piece out of their game. Yeah, also, great. You have Derrick Henry still in the building. He's super good. But without having A.J. Brown to take the top off those defenses, the Tennessee Titans offense became a lot more one-dimensional. They're struggling this year. And I'm just saying that is a point, just one point where that changed the future of a franchise, or like the contention window potentially of the Tennessee Titans. Now it's different with the Bears because you have Justin Fields in place. But all I'm saying is, like, it's just kind of funny, and everyone thinks that it's super easy, but like they at the end of the day, they end up trading a superstar, and it's going to set them back several years.
Yeah, I mean, you can say, if you don't want to pay the guy, trade him and just draft a first round receiver, exactly what the Titans did, but it's not that easy. It's not a 1-for-1 deal. And, that's maybe a little bit what's scary a little bit about the Roquan Smith trade, is that there's a similar situation, obviously very different positions. I don't know that you necessarily want to be giving out the type of money that Roquan Smith was demanding, or that we think he was demanding anyway. But those types of deals can make a big difference. And on the flip side, you got the Eagles who really have elevated their wide receiver position, which was already pretty good last year. And AJ Brown is just, added a whole extra element. And that's the reason why they're doing so well right now, with the best record in the NFL. And yeah, you look back on the Tennessee side, Kyle, are the Jaguars going to catch them in that division?
Jacksonville coming on all of a sudden.
They're only a game out.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when you have competent coaching on a team like Jacksonville compared to last year. How quickly it starts to look like a real NFL franchise. I don't know. I like what I'm seeing out of that team, but going back to the AJ Brown stuff that I was discussing, and what Mike B was talking about, the coaching and the coaching stuff, I have less concerns. Like, you shouldn't feel sold on Matt Eberflus and his staff. There's certainly concerns about clock management and a little bit on personnel use. But I think you got to take that with what the roster is. Now, I think you can have more concerns about the current state of the roster because you start looking at it and like the young players that you're really liking. Justin Fields, not a Ryan Poles draft pick. Darnell Mooney, not a Ryan Poles draft pick. Khalil Herbert, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. I mean, you're not talking a lot of guys in this class outside of those guys in the secondary. And I get it. Like it's his first year. It's a rebuild, but like Treston Ebner's not looking like he's going to be useful. You know, we got Rick talking about Butterfinger. He called him Butterfingers. Velus Jones, another opportunity to impress yesterday or to try and make an impact. Didn't do it. There's not a lot that you look at right now. And a young player, one of the few guys like that, Jack Sanborn leaves that game, which by the way, feel really bad yesterday, him leaving that game. Hopefully it's not something that, but he was an undrafted rookie free agent. Like you're starting to look at this draft class and you're worrying that they're not getting enough out of it. And then the free agents that they did sign, and we knew this going in, right? This was, I think, a lot of people's concern, and certainly my concern, that they didn't do enough for free agency or they didn't take big enough swing. And it's kind of funny or ironic because I'm talking about being careful in free agency. But I think there should be more concerns about Ryan Poles and the coaching staff.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Mike actually has a comment in here, sort of along that same line. Like if you're not blaming the coaches, then you have to talk about Ryan Poles. And yeah, I mean, you look at what they've got. I mean, I don't know what. I guess we can talk about Velus, Kyle. I mean, another fumble from Velus Jones. Another. You know, that was one of your high draft picks. That was one of your. You don't have a first round pick. You got 2 2s and a 3, and you know they pass on wide receivers with those second round picks, and here you are with a wide receiver who's got what, like 25 receiving yards on the season and 3 fumbles, 2 on special teams. At what point, you know, we've been saying all year, you know, keep giving him chances. At what point does that stop, Kyle?
We've reached the point that we're concerned is merited about any of the draft picks because these, you know, any of the guys that have seen substantial play that are struggling, whether that is Velus Jones or Treston Ebner, like they've been on the field enough now that we can start to draw some conclusions. It doesn't mean they're a lost cause. Like I know Mike at the beginning talking about if Ryan Poles really, you know, it's going to be like, I cut him now. Like there's no reason to do that. Like I get why Mike is saying that because he's frustrated with the way that's going. But like these are kids on rookie deals. You got to fill out a 53-man roster in a practice squad. But I understand the concerns with those guys, right? We've seen enough now. Like I said, we're getting a large enough sample size that there's reason for concerns. And the thing is, it's only 1 year for Ryan Poles, so you don't want to take this overboard. But I think if you have a certain expectation or if you feel like there's a certain path that the Bears should take this offseason, and it's not the path that they do take, and that's going to range. I'm saying your own personal opinion, and you're already worried about Ryan Poles and he doesn't take that. That's going to cause some people to get very aggravated really quickly. And I kind of understand it, though, because like you wanted to see more out of his first year in terms of guys that are going to be usable for this rebuild.
Well, especially with what we're talking about, where you know they didn't do a whole lot in free agency. You didn't have a lot to be excited about, and I think most Bears fans, you know, when that situation goes down in March, you turn your attention to the draft and you say, okay, this is where our guy Ryan Poles is going to find his dudes, and you know he's found a couple, and there's some question marks on a couple, and you know what, that's how it's going to be every year. You know, not all your draft picks are going to pan out, especially once you start talking day 2, day 3. Well, really anytime, but you want your first round picks to pan out. But, you know, I think I would not cut Velus Jones at this point. I wouldn't cut Treston Ebner. You know, with any of these rookies, a whole nother offseason is going to be so valuable to be in the offense for another year and to work with that strength and training staff for another year. You know, you can't cut bait on these guys now.
Well, and I feel good about the coaching staff and their ability to develop players. Like at this point, I do. You know, just the fact that we've seen this improvement out of Justin Fields, I think should give you faith that these guys and Teven Jenkins. I mean, and Jack Sanborn. I mean, there are 3 names right there that we've seen considerable improvement from. Braxton Jones, another guy, I mean, has certainly had his struggles at times this year, but getting more out of him than you expected. So there are signs that this coaching staff can develop players. Now, again, I think it's completely understandable if you have some questions about Ryan Poles. And so like T3P that in here talked about Poles turned 4 picks to 11. He has 5 starters. They have 5 starters because they need 5 bodies, man. Like these guys have to play. Like that doesn't mean they're good. Just because you have starters just doesn't mean they're good starters. And I'm not saying that they're going to be busts either, but like just because they're starters doesn't mean that they're performing like well enough that you should have drafted them.
It's funny because you look at there's been a lot of talk this week about the roster construction and could the Bears be the Eagles in 2 years and all that stuff. And you look at the roster that the Eagles have and especially in those trenches, offensive and defensive lines, they have so many veterans in those spots, and that's just not where the Bears are. The Bears have these young guys, first and second year players playing on that offensive line, first and second year players or third year players, I guess, in Travis Gibson on that defensive line, and Dominique Robinson, a rookie. That's just not. The Bears have starters from that draft class out of necessity. They don't have anybody else to put there.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm. And he T3P now trying to go through the starters.
Punter,
bringing up the punter as an example. No, I mean like you should be in. So for the concerns of Ryan Poles being some of these draft picks, some of the you can be the other side of that is Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon look like solid. We were talking about the secondary earlier. Like they look like really solid players. Particularly, I really like what I've seen from Jaquan Brisker. Kyler Gordon has had some really good upside plays, but had been more inconsistent. If he can get the consistency up, or if he can be a more consistent player, I think he's going to be a lot better shape. And I do think that's going to come. So there are certainly, I'm not trying to say like all hope is lost on Ryan Poles, but I also like you just can't tell me he has 5 starters because like that's not right. I mean technically it's right, but that's just being silly. But at the same time, there are legit reasons to have question marks and concerns going into this offseason. It's a big offseason to me for Ryan Poles.
Oh, I think it's a huge offseason for Ryan Poles. I mean, the whole last year was basically to set up, from here moving forward at the end of this season. You're putting yourself in position with the cap space and with the draft picks and. Now you gotta start to follow through on with some of that available capital and
well now you know Justin Fields is for real. That doesn't mean that there's not development.
That was a big part of this season is figuring out if that's the case.
You now cannot afford to buy time. Like he's on a rookie deal. He is the real deal. He's going to continue to develop. Your window is now open. It doesn't mean you're going to win the Super Bowl next year. That's not what I'm saying. But we saw that with how quickly it opened up for Cincinnati. That's how quickly it can happen in the NFL when you find a quarterback. They paper over so much. So, yeah, Ryan Poles has to have a good offseason.
Yeah, and it's really important for the Bears that that's the case. And, it's obviously this team has a lot of holes to fix and he has a lot of work to do. But I think anybody would be excited to see what he's going to come up with here over the next couple of months once the season is over.
It might be saying Poles claiming Alex Wood is highly alarming. It was at the time and it's been confirmed double over now. But like there was no risk. I mean, what's the risk of
the only risk is you're taking on his contract, but they have so much cap space that I don't even think that really matters.
Yeah, and you're bringing a guy like I liked Alex Leatherwood coming out of college. I know Mike B well enough. He's a good friend. I know Mike liked him coming out of college. He was in a system last year what happened in Vegas was a complete dumpster fire last year. You saw it with you just saw it with Teven Jenkins in terms of a guy that was a highly thought pick, getting his feet and getting the right, confidence underneath him. So I don't have a problem with Ryan Poles saying, well, that was a kid that I liked coming out of college from Alabama that, let's get him in here with the right people to guide him and see if we can get it on track. It doesn't look like it's working, but like, I don't think that you should read anything into that long-term for Ryan Poles. Like anything that's happened in season, I guess, like claiming Alex Leatherwood, I don't think I'm I think that's ridiculous to put that on Ryan Poles. Now, if you want to have concerns about last year's draft and free agency, that's fine. But claiming Alex Leatherwood is just piling on for no reason.
There's, you always want to throw darts at the board and see what sticks. And this year, especially, I think Ryan Poles could throw as many darts as he wanted because of where the roster was at. And so, he did that with Alex Leatherwood. He's done that with N'Keal Harry. There's other examples. Can't think of them off the top of my head, but, just get some guys in here who've been struggling in other places or overlooked, whatever, and see what your coaching staff can do. I have no problem with moves like that this year, especially. Now, if you're a team that's battling for the NFC North division every year, different story, different situation. But in a year where you got 3 wins and you're probably not going to win a lot of games, I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Want to quickly get a word for our sponsor in before I forget. Marengo Guns, always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the expert at Marengo's Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And now want to go in with Timothy Wire checking in with us here. Gordon playing slot corner, learning a new position for him. Yeah, like don't take me. And I'm not trying to be overly critical of Kyler Gordon's played well, and you should feel good about him. There have been some inconsistencies that he needs to correct. I think he will. And that's a good point. He is learning a new system, and you look back, it kind of a similar arc to me as Jalen Johnson, and a little bit similar players, I feel like, because like Jalen Johnson, obviously now we're talking about one of the better cornerbacks in the entire NFL. But you go back to his rookie year, he did play really well his rookie year, but he also had some of these inconsistencies. They're still rookies. Even very good rookies are going to have these inconsistencies. I think he's doing a really good job overall.
Look, we talk about it all the time, but that slot corner spot is the toughest spot for those defensive backs. You have to be you're playing in tighter, closer to the line of scrimmage, and you have to be prepared to help in the run game. And there's a million different responsibilities that you don't necessarily have when you're on the outside. And I think it's really impressive that Kyler has been able to play that spot at all as a rookie. I mean, the fact that he could step in there from week 1 and do that is really impressive. And that in itself should be a positive sign for Bears fans, because you can keep developing on that. He's going to get better in that spot. And 2, you could always throw him outside, and he's obviously shown that he's capable of playing both spots. And that's a really good thing for a rookie.
Yeah, it's his versatility, utility. And then you talk about when you combine that with what they have with Jaquan Brisker and his kind of versatility, and you combine that essentially all together with those guys, allowing Eddie Jackson to do what he does best when healthy. Hopefully, it sounds like they got better news on Eddie Jackson than potentially, when you're talking about foot injuries. I believe it was a Liz Frank injury that doesn't require. Yeah, Liz Frank. Liz Frank is a really concerning injury because those can heal. Like you never know how they're going to heal. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he doesn't have to have surgery is already a good sign for Eddie Jackson to be able to maybe. It's hard to speculate right now, but that gives you the potential that he'll be ready to go come training camp, and not before. So that's a good sign because you go into this offseason with your secondary intact. Going back, because Mike had followed up about, he does bring up a good point about Ryan Poles' background being in the offensive line, and then Rick had followed it up with something that kind of built on it. And I do get it when you start putting the stuff together here. So like Rick talked about, and Poles wanted to get rid of Teven, talking about Teven Jenkins and everything that happened in the offseason, and he's turned into maybe a Pro Bowler. So I'm very worried about Poles and linemen. Lucas Patrick. Yeah, I mean, so when you do combine the fact that Lucas Patrick was, kind of their big addition for the offensive line that was going to have that Mauler type guy in at center, and it certainly hasn't worked out. Now the questions could be the injuries. I mean, he was injured before the season even started. So
he never played that. He played that center position for like a quarter.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do want to put an asterisk there, but I do understand what you're saying because I think a lot of us had questions about Lucas Patrick when that signing was made. And Teven Jenkins, yeah, that is concerning. So when you combine those things with Alex Leatherwood, I get the narrative that's coming together there. And if we get into next season and the offensive line is still an issue, still a major issue, I don't expect that it's going to also be a Pro Bowl line. But if it's still a major issue, I think what you guys are saying right now, I'm going to be circling back and agreeing with you guys and saying that you were on the ball. But I think you're jumping to a conclusion too early based on early evidence. I think we need at least one more offseason to see where this goes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, and we'll never know the answer, but it's important to question whether, particularly with the Lucas Patrick thing, sure, you can knock that signing, and that was their big offensive lineman signing. But was Ryan Poles really expecting him to come in here and be more than just a 1-year paper over, try to get something figured out at that center position? I know he's got a 2-year deal, but they could easily get out of that. He could be back certainly next year. But I don't necessarily, it depends what Ryan Poles was looking at that signing as, is that supposed to be your long-term answer at that center spot? I don't know that it necessarily was. That could still be a position that they're looking at this offseason.
And that kind of would bother me if that was the case, because then you're looking at, and that was only a 2-year deal. As you're right, that they can easily get out after 1 year. But if that's the case, what did you get out of this free agent class?
That's a fair question. Absolutely.
And I get it. Like, this was a teardown and they wanted to find out what Justin Fields had. But again, we kind of got to it. And what I was, I guess, alluding to with the Tennessee Titans talk is trying to fix everything in one offseason. You're already way ahead of the ball because, like I said, you're papered over with Justin Fields being what he appears to be. But now, like, you've closed the window, or you've made the path much narrower for yourself because you didn't get anything useful out of that first year in terms of free agency. So the question is, was that by design, as you were saying, we're never going to know? Or did they miss, like on a Lucas Patrick? Did they hope Larry Ogunjobi, who they wanted to be their nose tackle, and obviously that didn't work out? Like, were they hoping maybe those were the two guys that were going to come out of this? Was it the incorrect way to go? Like, should they have had more faith in Justin Fields and taken a bigger swing at wide receiver and, potentially had found something? I don't know. It's hard to tell right now. That's, I guess, the talk we're going to end up getting into this offseason, and there's no satisfactory answer right now. But I don't know. Where do you want to go from here, Sean?
Yeah, well, Kyle, I mean, it's we've been saying for a couple of weeks now, we're not quite ready to talk about the draft or free agency, but I think it's time you and I got to start studying up because we only got 3 games left here, and that conversation is going to turn real quick.
Well, and let's quickly hit on the fact that the Bears are now in really good position to have the 2nd overall pick.
Because Broncos win yesterday.
The Brett Ripien beating Colt McCoy and Trace McSorley, and God, that was a brutal football game. I knew it was that was a brutal game, and I kind of thought Denver had a chance to win that. I mean, Arizona isn't very good when they're healthy, and then you lose Kyler Gordon. So I'm sure the Bears had a little bit of the front office. Ryan Poles was probably celebrating a little bit yesterday because whether they end up using that 2nd pick or not, like every pick notch up on the belt there, it's another bite at the apple for a premier player or more ammo to trade down with,
Yeah, so they are alone in that 2nd spot now. 1 game lead over I say leads like in air quotes. 1 game lead over Denver and Arizona for that number 2 spot. And yeah, I mean, Kyle Houston was giving the Chiefs a run yesterday. I mean, they got a couple winnable games at the end of the schedule here, and man, if they picked up a win over the Chiefs, that would have put the Bears in even a better spot.
Yeah, we had a chance there. You look at the last 3 games for the Bears. Yeah, it's outside of that Week 18 game. I mean, and listen, the Bears are clearly showing they're close enough to where they could beat that Detroit team. I'm going to get our Don Bird in there. They shouldn't beat that Detroit team. Detroit's
playing really well.
Detroit's playing really well. But what I'm saying is, like, the NFL is still the NFL, and weird things happen. And Detroit's not a great team. They're a much improved team. I think you saw it. Well, I say that, then the Minnesota Vikings. How did the Vikings win that game?
I didn't catch any of that game, Kyle. I heard this. I was driving out to the suburbs and I heard the score on the radio. It was 30-0. And I said, whoa, that's surprising. And then, an hour later, I checked my phone and it was a tie game. And I said, what?
Yeah, just absolutely wild. But what I guess I'm trying to get at there is like, because Detroit doesn't have an elite quarterback, Jared Goff, they're doing well enough around him and he's making enough plays that they're winning some games. But like, you can have an issue where Kirk Cousins goes out and throws a bunch of picks in the first half, and all of a sudden the Bears find themselves. Like, that's what I'm saying when it comes to. I expect the Bears to lose all three of these games. They should lose all three of these games, but like, they could beat Detroit. They could beat Minnesota. Minnesota, as we saw, is not a perfect team. They might not have much to play for anyway, week 18. So they're not solidified into that second pick, but they definitely are in position to get it. Want to go hit a couple more questions as we hit 45 minutes and get ready to get out of here pretty soon. T3P podcast says, you didn't have any faith in Justin Fields. I think he was referring to me.
I think he might be referring to Ryan Poles.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, if you were referring, I was referring to Ryan Poles, and I didn't say that he didn't have any faith in Justin Fields. I'm saying that I think it's clear that he said, prove it. He decided that I don't want to tie myself to a quarterback that I might feel good about, but I don't know it. And I don't know exactly where he's at after a year in what was a disaster under Matt Nagy, right? That doesn't mean he didn't have any faith, but he didn't have enough faith to take big swings in free agency. So maybe that's an indictment of him that he didn't have enough faith in him. But for myself, yeah, see, now he pops in myself. I kind of had the same concerns about, and maybe I'm projecting onto Ryan Poles here, because I believed in the potential for Justin Fields and the athleticism. I worried about the what happened last year. I worried about the beating he was going to take behind a bad offensive line, and I worried that we weren't going to see him processing the field quicker because it didn't progress last year at all. And that was wondering, okay, is that Justin Fields that isn't learning to read the field, or is that bad coaching? I think clearly now we can chalk that up to bad coaching. And what I'm saying is, I think Ryan Poles probably needed to do that as well. You can watch all the tape in the world and listen to, he's an NFL GM. All these guys are better. I'm some guy sitting in a room. These guys have a better idea than I do. But I've covered enough football to see the patterns to know that there's a reason they operate in the way they do. So if he was 100% in on Justin Fields, they would have operated a bit differently. Doesn't mean they would have spent a ton of money, but I think they would have operated a bit differently. It's not saying that they don't think that he could be there, but they were being cautious.
And the fact that they went out and made the deadline trade for Chase Claypool, I think shows that they came to that conclusion that, yeah, this guy is going to be a part of our plans next year and the year after. And we got to get him another weapon because we just don't have, we didn't set him up with enough weapons before the season.
At some point, it was after the draft. I don't know if it could have been during mini camps. It could have been during training camp. I'm guessing it was some point in season though, because you look at the way things have progressed, the way they changed the offense, going back to that pseudo bye, everything is progressing in a way that the best reason to feel good is things are progressing in a natural way where they're making adjustments based on what they see on the field. And that's happening both with the coaching staff and in the approach of the front office. Now, they painted themselves in the corner this year when we're talking about putting guys like Treston Ebner and Velus Jones on the field that aren't ready because of the approach that they took. But I think that they get it, is what at the end of the day. But there was some doubts about Justin Fields, and I think they were reasonable doubts, but those should be gone now. Like I said it a couple weeks ago, I think he's elite. I think within maybe by next year, by the middle of next year, we're going to be talking about him as an MVP candidate. I think he's that good. and he's got work to do. But the fact that the progression is happening at a steady clip, this isn't something where it's stop and go, where we have, you think back to like the second year with Mitch Trubisky. Maybe it was the second year. Yeah, it was the first year under Matt Nagy, and like Mitch had a Pro Bowl year. But you look at you think back in it, and there were stretches like he'd have 4 or 5 games where he was really good, and you'd start to say to yourself, "Oh, maybe Mitch is turning the corner." But there was always things that made you worry, and then he'd have 2 or 3 games in a row that was just a disaster. You're not seeing that with Justin Fields. You're seeing a steady progression from him, and you're not just seeing a steady progression, but you're seeing the electric plays that come on top of that because of who he is. And when you put those two things together, I think you should have all the faith in the world that Justin Fields is not going to be the issue for this franchise over the next few years.
With Mitch, it was the boneheaded interceptions and mistakes, and really, I really only think Justin Fields has had one of those all season. That interception to Jeff Okudah against the Lions, where it was just a terrible throw, shouldn't have thrown it, whatever. Other than that, you don't see those crippling mistakes, which, when you have a guy who can rip off the runs that he's ripping off, I mean, that's a great recipe right there.
But yeah, and sorry, I'm going to cut you off because even there was a couple plays yesterday where you're seeing the progression of him or the evolution of his game, where not just passing the ball, running the ball. There was a play early. Daryl Johnson actually commented on it. He picked up a first down, and he could have probably got another 4 or 5 yards, but he slid. Like, he used his athleticism to make a big play, get a first down, move the chain. But instead of trying to get another 15 or 20 yards, as he ended up doing on that ridiculous play down the sideline where it looked like he may have scored. And that's why, like, that's the next level thing that's going to make this so much fun. But what is going to make him an elite player is how smart he is and how quickly he's learning. Because as Daryl Johnson pointed out, he got down on that play after getting the first down. And then another example in the passing game, that touchdown to David Montgomery, that was a play where he could have tried to run that up the middle. He could have tried to force that onto the back line of the end zone. He made the proper adjustment. That was a really good low-angled arm slot to get that ball underneath and out to David Montgomery in a position where Montgomery could not just catch it, but not have to make an adjustment and then wait. He caught that ball in stride because where Justin placed that and was able to turn upfield and easily get into the end zone. Those are the type of things that are really encouraging.
That touchdown pass is the type of play, that you watch it on TV and you say, okay, he threw a 10-yard touchdown pass or whatever it was. But the quarterback nerds out there are going to look at that and the guys who are trying to play this position really high at a really high level are going to look at that and say, that was a big time throw. The way he changed that arm angle and made got the ball out there to David.
We know he can make the difficult throws. He has the arm and the ball placement, the talent to do that. It's when recognizing when to do it and when to use his athleticism to make the easier play, though, to say, okay, I don't need to force this. Well, I waited too long because I was looking there. He's overcoming the fact that he waited too long to look into the end zone, maybe, and now is making the adjustments to what pressure is coming on him and using those arm slots and to make the play and get the extra yardage out of him. And that is so incredibly encouraging.
Kyle, did you hear the quote yesterday where Justin was asked about rushing for 1,000 yards and he said, I don't want to do this every year.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Like, he realizes what wins, in today's NFL, and that next step of his game is going to continue to be in the passing game. He's proven everything he needs to prove with his legs. I mean, you're the third quarterback ever to rush for 1,000 yards. When he says he doesn't want to do that every year, that's because he knows, like, it's been almost out of necessity this year. That has been what has gotten them first downs and has gotten them in the end zone. And so they're going to stick with it. He's going to keep doing it. He said, well, I've come this far. I might as well try to go get Lamar's 2019 record. He's about 200 yards shy. But there's that realization that, the next step of this offense is going to be to get another weapon in here to really work on this passing attack and to be rolling that way. And then, the threat of his legs is always going to be there. If he can continue to progress in the passing game, that's going to just opened so many things up for him.
His athleticism and the run game is always going to be a threat that is almost unrivaled in the history of the league, and at the top of the league, better than Josh Allen, better than Jalen Hurts. I mean, those guys are elite runners. And part of that, though, is when you combine a special athlete, and both of those guys are, along with Justin Fields, but when you really start talking elite, like Joe Burrows and Patrick Mahomes are both a step slower, but they're very good athletes. But they look like Joe Burrow, even despite the injuries, has been breaking some pretty long runs. I think it might have been yesterday he had a touchdown run. I can't remember. He's had some run because like what happens is those guys, as they get better, as the football game at the NFL level starts to slow down for them, those natural instincts and athleticism start to outweigh everything else on the field. And they're able, like those guys see the field better than so many others. So like, yeah, they're natural athletes to begin with, but when they also are able to see the field better than your normal person, like they look that much faster is what I guess I'm trying to say. And Justin Fields appears to be getting that part of the game, like not just the athleticism, but the processing of the game. It's slowing down. And when you're going to be able to combine those two things, it's going to be special.
We were talking with Justin about this earlier in the week before the game, and he couldn't quite put it into words. Somebody asked him something about that comfortability, and yeah, he's out there, and you can almost see it in the way he's playing. Like he's no longer second guessing himself. He's not necessarily slow. Sometimes he might be slow in throwing the football or whatever, but he understands what's going on around him. And I really think that has just come with playing more football. And that's been a big, not just playing more football, but also like playing more football in this offense. And I think the fact that, the Bears should be in the same offense next year. I don't think Luke Getsy is going anywhere yet. I would be surprised if that happens as quickly, but that's only going to help matters with Justin and his level of comfortability back there in the pocket.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Getsy's going anywhere after this year. Another year with Luke Getsy in this system, I do think fluidity or what's the word I'm looking for? Continuity. That's what I'm looking for. Continuity is going to be big for Justin Fields this offseason, just because to get to that next level, clearly this coaching staff, for any concerns you have, the coaching staff is doing a good job unlocking him. So yeah, keeping Luke Getsy, keeping this coaching staff intact it's going to be a big deal. I do think that's going to be the case.
And the Eagles, sorry to cut you off one more time.
No, you're good.
The Eagles talk about that all the time with Jalen Hurts. Is he went through like 5 different coordinators in 5 different years before going all the way back, maybe even to high school. I can't remember exactly, but until Nick Sirianni got here in Philadelphia, and there's been some continuity from year 1 to year 2 under him.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting towards an hour here, just about there. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We got one more question from Rick that we didn't get to, Sean. So we'll close it out with that. And then, looking what we got. Bears are off this week because they play on Saturday. So we won't do a usual Friday show. You want to do Thursday morning? Just move things up a day?
Let's talk about it afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. So pay attention to our Twitter accounts. We got to figure out a schedule with the Bears having a different week. We will be back to preview some Bears Bills. That's going to be another interesting game this week. But we'll close it out here. Rick had the question about Jaquan Brisker. Can we talk about Jaquan Brisker still making mental errors in Week 14? Is that more the player or the coaching of the player?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think he's referring to that blitz play where Jalen Hurts ran right up the middle for the touchdown, and it appeared that Brisker maybe picked the wrong gap to blitz, or something closed up there, and he wasn't really able to get where he needed to go, and Jalen Hurts sort of went right up the gut and scored a 20-something yard touchdown. And I don't know if it's hard to say who that's on. I kind of think that might, in that particular situation, that might be on Brisker, but without knowing exactly what the call is, it's really hard to say. Brisker has been a really good blitzer all season, so it's a little surprising to see something like that. But maybe at the same time, you're not going to connect on every single one of those, and certainly they didn't really leave themselves much help behind him once he missed Hurts. I mean, there was nobody there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened on that specific play. So talking about like a mental error coaching, in that one specific instance, I can't say. I will say overall, I think Jaquan Brisker's been really good. Rick, I think it's going back to the same thing I said about like Jalen Johnson his rookie year. It's and Kyler Gordon this year. It's the same boat. Like I think you're seeing really good instincts and really good athleticism. Even good young players are going to make mistakes. If it continues to be an issue well into his second season, then those are concerns that it's either something that he can't fix or it's a coaching issue. But there's enough positives that I wouldn't be at all concerned by occasional mishaps yet. Here quickly, I'll follow up. Mike Ipson chiming in with Eberflus said in the press conference the safety went to the wrong gap. So there you go. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone who went ahead and joined us today. It was great. I always love everyone in here in the chat. Helps us guide the show. If you're on YouTube, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. Everything you do like that helps more people find the show for us. It helps give us some feedback, know what you guys want to talk about, make sure that we're not just on here talking to ourselves. We appreciate all the interaction. One more time, make sure you go to shawlocal.com. We're going to have everything for you here. Wrapping up the Week 15 game between the Bears and the Eagles. We'll dive into Bears-Bills. Sean and I will be back later in the week. Until then, everyone enjoy the last week of holiday week. A lot of people on vacation. I know it's freezing cold out. Try and stay warm out there and enjoy the week. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. We'll talk to you later, everyone.